And we're live. Hello, everyone. I don't see the participants yet, but if you are there, right, where do you come from? Because we're curious. We here are from different countries, and we're curious where people that come here come to us. My name is Michał, and I'm going to be moderating the discussion today, but also participating. And at first, since I wanted to, for you, the viewers, to know what fields of expertise we come from, I wanted everyone to just in a sentence say, what's your field of expertise, your primary field of expertise? Let's start with Ida.
Yes, hello everyone. I am actually a teacher. So I've been working in the digital marketing industry for 15 years. I was a social media manager for about 6 years in the hotel industry. And then 4 years ago, I transferred to teaching. And I guess as a teacher, you are a storyteller. So I also teach storytelling, but I tell stories every day. And I guess storytelling is crucial in order to learn. And learning is, if we think about it as a cognitive change, that's also crucial when we go into business. So that's my background and a little bit about me.
Thank you. Sanjay?
Yeah, hi. My name is Sanjay. I'm from Germany, Mannheim. I'm the director of the European Internet Marketing Institute. What we do is we support businesses to get more digital and understand all the key technologies. And podcasting is one of the main parts in telling the story of a company, of a brand. So I'm very excited about all your questions, and feel free to ask anything you wish.
Okay, thanks. Clo?
Hi, everyone. My name is Clo Willaerts. I'm an old school tech blogger from Belgium. And I publish handbooks about digital marketing and video marketing.
Thanks. Sarah?
Hey, I'm Sarah. I'm from Belgium, but I'm in Cyprus, so it's sunny outside. I'm a mathematician who somehow became a Facebook marketer, and right now I work for a client like Hootsuite. And some of my biggest success was combining Facebook ad with storytelling. So that's me.
Very cool. And Bethan?
Bethan, I'm based in the UK, so it's definitely not sunny and wonderful here. I'm the marketing director at NetSales. We're a product and software development consultancy. So I've got a background in software marketing, technology marketing, and I also run a podcast called The Brave, which is about building a better future.
Thanks. And my name is Michał Kasprzyk. I'm a producer. I produce podcasts for companies mostly, and I host my own. But they are in Polish, unfortunately, so I cannot really brag about them. But if you're a Polish listener, then Lekko Mówni is one of them. All right, guys. I wanted to begin with how you use storytelling. And from there, we're going to see where the discussion goes. Also, to the viewers, if you have any questions along the way, put them in the chat. I see the chat constantly, so I'm going to be asking questions to our experts here. So if you have any, let us know. So how do you use storytelling? Who wants to start? Just go. Yep.
Structure is everything. It kind of helps you to keep everything together in your head. And I use the classic storytelling structures to pace whatever I'm saying, because sometimes you get just wrapped up in your own ideas. You go on tangents, and keeping within the time limit is something I'm still training for, actually.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I like to integrate modern stories with old stories. So we can find parallels between the ancient Greek world and the total digital world of today. So if we start storytelling, we can we can take the people from something they may know from the Greek world into a new modern age.
Can you give an example? Because that's you made me curious.
Yes, especially about students. So Aristotle said about students that they are lazy, they don't learn, they are always, I normally start my speeches with such a quote. And then I ask the people, from which century is that? And then they always say, oh, this is my kid. It just fits to my kid. And I said, okay, Aristotle has talked about that already. So, digital natives is nothing new. So
Ida, is it true that students are lazy?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes teachers are lazy too, I guess. But yeah, I want to tap into that because I really believe that if we want to take storytelling seriously in business, we have a lot to learn from literature. And I try to integrate literature, classical literature, modern literature into the world of business every day with my students. And I also believe in the power of structure and the idea that any piece of content, whether it's an Instagram post or a podcast episode, needs to relate to the idea of having a beginning, a middle, and an end, and also in terms of a classroom lecture. So knowing storytelling gives you a huge benefit in life and in business.
I teach digital marketing in Brussels at a college called Odyssey. And so a number of the points that they can gather as students is that they have to create a podcast session about the lecture, about one of the lectures. So they have to be able to organize it among themselves. Have like some of them even make like a little audio jingle at first, and they know this podcast format very well. So we have here today A, B, C, and D, and then kind of summarize the course that they've been following that day. And these podcasts are the files are available to all of the students. There's about 100 of them, and they come from all over the world. They just study in Brussels, and it helps them to rehearse the content of the courses on digital marketing by listening to the podcast episodes that their fellow students were making.
But
and,
this is
there's a great app called Anchor, anchor.fm. It helps you publish your podcast files to anything really. I think they are owned by Spotify right now.
Yeah,
but Anchor kind of solves the issue of how do I get my podcast episode on, I don't know,
anywhere basically.
Yes.
But this is a very good idea on how to do knowledge management, not only in the at the universities, but also within the companies, because I easily can see how companies can adapt that and really somebody reads a book and then records an episode about what they learned from the book, available to other employees of the company. That's a very good use.
I got, if I could add, I got into storytelling by mistake. I'm the least person likely to talk about storytelling. Actually, I studied mathematics and computer science in university because I was bad at writing. I'm like, writing mathematics formula, no grammar, no spelling, no punctuation, I'm in heaven. And then when I did marketing, I would read people ad, not as a marketer, but as a user. I thought, this is not good. But I cannot write. You give me a white page, I have no idea how to write. And I started listening, reading, looking at the client content, YouTube video, webinar, etc. And each time I had an aha moment, I would write in random paper. I said, oh, that's good. And it turned out that good storytelling is 90% maybe listening, reading, 10% writing. You basically, as content, you're not really writing it, it turned out. And that's how, oh, okay, I'm writing about storytelling somehow by mistake.
So how do you listen in order to tell a story?
Let's say there is a podcast or audio or video. I forget I'm doing any marketing. And if something moved me, like a part of story, like, oh my God, that's really emotional. For example, one of the ads was about a woman that her husband didn't, like, basically locked her in. Can I do babysitting to help with the family? And then she took some of the money and put it aside. And after a few years, it's like, bye-bye, I'm going to university. And as a person, it moved me personally. So like, wow, this is a good story. So I'm like, this part of story I need to start as a hook, you see?
So it's basically looking for stories around everywhere in life.
Yeah.
Mostly,
Yeah.
right?
And each time it makes me emotional, I'm like, oh, this is something I didn't know. I learned something new, or that's interesting, or that's a new perspective I never heard beforehand. I'm like, I could use this for a story.
Do you have
I
different
also had to
perspectives?
brush up on my French last year, and I didn't feel like following online courses about the French language. So I started listening to French spoken podcasts about topics that interested me. And one of them was L'heure du crime, which is by a very, very well-known French journalist. So he's being replaced right now because he's really old. But this guy is such a good storyteller. It was always about, most of the time, a famous crime that happened in France or in Belgium. And then the way he would he would invite like the lawyers, the victims. His storytelling skills were just amazing, and just by listening to it in French, I was able to kind of get more confident in French myself. Jacques Pradel is his name, and he's just great.
Nice.
So if you have to learn another language, just pick the best storyteller in that language. Could be Polish, for example, and especially if it's about topics that interest you, you will do the effort to try and follow the story, and then in a very casual way, you can learn a language.
So storytelling helps with learning, definitely.
Yes.
And what other benefits to storytelling do you see? Why should anyone use storytelling? Why should people tell stories?
I think one of the sorry.
Oh, Bethan, go.
Being the polite British person, I think one of the things I see often is a lot of the products are very not boring, but they're very kind of intangible. Like cybersecurity, software that improves your cybersecurity, that can be quite dry. And one of the ways of really engaging customers, and there's a lot of buzzwords in this industry, there's a lot of people trying to prove how smart they are with their content. If you can tell a story, if you can tell a story of a customer, if you're trying to sell something and you can say like, this is someone who used our product, this is the journey that they went on, this is the problem they had at the beginning, these are the different solutions they tried to follow, then they found us, and this is what we did for them, this is the path we took them down, and these are the results. It's a simple 3-part story at the end of the day. That is so much more powerful, told from a first person perspective. We often like to write kind of case studies in this weird kind of third person. It doesn't work. A lot of content really should be, in my opinion, much more customer led, so the voice of the customer, but actually in a kind of interview format. There'll be a reason why people have logged on to listen to this today, because it's us telling our stories, our experience, from our different perspectives. And that's going to be much more fascinating than someone writing a very dry essay on storytelling.
Right. So what I find one of the biggest mistakes marketers make about storytelling is they think that they have to tell stories of their own companies. While this is untrue. I mean, obviously you can, if the story is compelling enough and you can take something out of it, then sure. But mostly what you should focus on is, as Bethan said, stories of your customers, stories of any peers that you have around yourself. All right, Ida, I think you wanted to add.
When I teach about storytelling, I show an image of the Trojan horse. I'm fascinated by how you use this imagery. So a Trojan horse, basically the horse is emotions, and inside the horse is information that you as a marketing professional want to convey to your target audience. Now, if you just mention all the features of a new product, or you just give the definition of a particular marketing term, they wouldn't let you in. But if you wrap it up in emotions by telling a story, they will let your horse in. And that's why storytelling is such a powerful tactic. It kind of It's so recognizable, even like 6-month-old babies know, they look up, and when you're telling a story, it can be a bedtime story, you have their attention and you can keep their attention. We're hardwired in our brains to listen to stories. So as a marketing professional, if you want your audience to listen, you will have to use storytelling, because otherwise they will not let you in.
Mhm.
I'd like to tap into what Sarah said about not being a storyteller. I guess, I mean, being a mathematician, you are listening to others. I mean, you're listening to your customers by reading the data. And it's interesting that we talk about storytelling, not necessarily story listening. And we know that from previous research that active listening is one of the key competences in our society. And I also believe that in order to create those stories that make a difference for our audience and our customers, we need to start with where Sarah is, in the listening, in the data, and in the what makes them tick. And the major question that I'm thinking about right now is how do we become active listeners?
I could answer that question.
Yeah.
One product I promoted a writer about how to launch their career. And I cannot write an ad that talk about the pain point. I'm like, can I interview your client and get their story? And what I tell the client, this is like military interrogation. I don't have the money to buy the course, but I want you to give me enough information about your story that I get value. And some would say, hey, I used to work for a newspaper as a journalist doing PR. It sucked. Sucked is not specific. Why did it suck? Oh, they tell me you have 3 hours to write a story. And it was a bad story because somebody gave money to the newspaper and they open a nut shop in a petrol station and say, make it sexy, write about them. You see, it's nearly like you want to feel you're reading a page from the person's diary at the end of the day. That's more powerful than everyone want to read about the story about somebody else. No one wants to buy that. You see, there is entertainment even if you don't buy, because you're like, oh, I learned a thing or two from that story.
Mm-hmm. So it's about asking the right questions to whoever you're telling the story about.
Yeah, and I spent with each, I interviewed maybe like 9 clients. It wasn't a questionnaire like here is a survey, because they might tell you this is an amazing course. No. We jump on a Zoom call. I spent like 50 minutes, 1 hour. Each time I'm like, I don't get the full story. I keep asking questions to fill the whole question. It's nearly like I need to ask enough questions about their life or their career.
What kinds of questions do you ask?
Let me think. In one case, somebody said I made 30 I redesigned my website. That's bragging, that's claim. I'm like, show me your website, show me the old website, what you changed. And he said, oh, one of the things I changed is I added my process for writing. I said, you're missing revenue, and I could use data to uncover the missing revenue. I added an e-commerce store that I managed to increase their %. This made me more credible. It's really not saying, oh, I did better. No. What exact step did you do? It's nearly like I'm having a camera. It's like nearly asking questions till I feel I'm having a camera and I'm filming a part of their life somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And storytelling can help companies, especially in the HR, for example. I had great experiences there because storytelling about the company history, the company brand. And what I experienced there was that it also helps character building. So it helps, it for the first time when you're doing a podcast and you're hearing your own voice, that is a great experience. And I think that storytelling will help young people to find their voice, to find their story, And my experience is that the more connected the experience and the storytelling is, the more valuable the story becomes. I'm invited on many international events, and then I hear very often the same story. So they stole the story, and that was not authentic anymore. So we should be really looking at how to create a very individual, a very personal story, and then we can go out with the story, and then you can sell anything with that.
So how do we do that? Because some of you previously mentioned something like story structure, and that you are proponents of story structure. What does story structure mean, and how does it help building stories?
Well, it is a great writer in its own right. Kurt Vonnegut has this, there's a blurry video on YouTube about him explaining that there are basically only like 16 story like character arcs that return time and time again, like a man in a hole. So someone starts out pretty good on average, and then something bad happens, and then people will want to listen to know how the story ends. And I think he wrote like his student's thesis about it pretty, casually. But it dates from the 70s, I think. It's called Storytelling. Help me, Kurt Vonnegut, Shapes of Stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I often use it in my courses because, one, it's funny, and two, it actually makes sense. His point that there are, in his case, 16 classic story structures. Once you know them, you see them everywhere, and they are everywhere because they work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you actually look at some biggest Hollywood movies, they are all structured more or less in the same way. That's amazing that it works. It actually works so well, its structure, that it makes so much money, and people wanna see the movies that are basically about the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, that's a really good advice. I had to write that down, Shaping Stories. So that's a book that I'm going to...
Shape of Stories.
Shape of Stories.
Yes. And unfortunately, there are no books about it. But when you stumble upon a very blurry video of Kurt Vonnegut explaining it, then you get a really good introduction.
It's ridiculously funny, actually.
Yes,
the video.
it is.
Yeah,
but
I guess it's. Structure is one thing, but then you also have that authentic part that we talked about before, and I really try to work with my students and also clients in how to find your uniqueness. And the hard truth is that you have to schedule time for it. So I think that my advice is that you need 3 hours a week of pure inspiration, where you block out your agenda, and it's not allowed to have any meetings or any small task chores. In my world, my true inspiration is reading. I read a book every week, but for others it can be other things, and you need to find your sources of inspiration, and that can serve as an entry point. And we need to find ways to go inward rather than seeking outward, because all of a sudden when we seek outward, read Google, we end up at that point where we share a story that is a copy-paste story. So structure is somehow following the pattern of an old myth or an old story that is in our heuristics. What really makes it tick is often adding your personal angle to it, and it is a time. It requires time.
The classic structure, it's always a famous model, is the hero's journey. And the most interesting stories are about someone who goes to, remember Netflix series Stranger Things? They had the Upside Down. So the hero has to go out and then go to a completely different place and fight monsters, etc., and then come back. And every good story follows the hero's journey. And if everybody's happy and everything is fine, it's not an interesting story. You need to have this tension
and conflict,
what someone
and
wants and
obstacles.
then what happens.
But Annie, you wanted to add something?
While you're making other plans. So if you're able to tell a company's story from the point of view of all the challenges you had, the failure maybe, the bumps in the road, those are what make a story interesting.
That's true. Bethan, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the point made around, like, you need to take time to do this. And I think whether your story is going to be written down or it's going to be a video or, whatever format it's going to be, you need to, the first iteration of it basically will be crap. Like, it will be bad. And that is part of the process. And I think a lot of people, I've mentored a lot content writing in particular, and they sit down and they expect to be able to just like type away, and every word I write will be the one that I keep on the page. Bing, bam, boom, done, can write this piece of content in, a couple of hours. And this is why the internet is filled with so much crap. 90% of content that's out there is pretty bloody terrible. It's written for Google, so it's not even written for a human. That's why it really come up with these articles. Other articles because everyone's trying to get that position on the SERP. Really, no one has time to write things that are good. And I'm one of those writers where I hate writing. I hate the process. It's really painful. It's, when I start out, I'm like, bloody hell, how am I going to do this? But I love having written. I love the end result. And I think that's something that everyone, there are very few writers out there that really enjoy writing. Let's be perfectly honest. So if you go into it thinking like, I'm going to have a great time, this is going to be a great experience, and I'm never going to have to do any editing, and the first thing I write will be wonderful, you're going to produce some crap. And your audience, ultimately who you're writing it for, they deserve the time and the care and the craft and the attention that is required to produce a good bit of content and produce a good story that makes sense. Because every person, I think someone made this point earlier, we've all come across those stories where you're like,
so I'm from Belgium, so when you make
Sarah, sorry, Clo, can we give voice to Sarah, please?
Yeah, if I could add to what Eda said, you need inspiration to be a good storyteller. You need to read a lot of stories. I once was having dinner with somebody who managed multiple hotels, and I asked her, what is a story you never forget? She said she was in a hotel, I forgot what city, and 5 minutes before she leave her job, somebody said, you're the hotel manager? There is a room with a horrible smell. Can you go there? She knocked on the door. Everything okay? Okay, I need a new coffee maker. Okay, but what happened with the existing? No, I need a new coffee maker. She bring a coffee maker. I said, yeah, there is a really bad smell. Everybody's complaining. And it turned out the person bought some eels and tried to cook the eels in the coffee makers. I think I laughed so hard I was coughing. But basically somebody in an industry that they have client, they are a doctor, a hotel manager, if you ask them, what is something that 10 years later you'll never forget? Suddenly you get an authentic story. And that's a good story sometimes to tell.
Yeah, I'm going to remember these eels.
What
have you done?
The first episode of everything you do will always suck. And that's okay. I mean, that's what I like about the internet is the process of you starting out like a regular schmuck like everyone else, and then learning along the process in itself is also an interesting story. So when you're starting with a podcast series, don't get too stuck up on that it has to be perfect. On the internet, authenticity is more important than perfection. So it's better to just throw out that first sucky episode out there. Just improve with every episode that you make.
So since you started a conversation about podcasts, I'd like to move more into this territory since we have 15 minutes left. By the way, may I remind you, all the viewers, if you have any questions, just write them down in the chat, or there's the Q&A section in the chat as well. So just use it. It's for you. Podcasting. we have people here that use podcasting in different manners. We have people that are guests on podcasts. We have people that host podcasts. We have people that produce podcasts. Tell me, what marketing benefits does podcasting give you? Who wants to start?
You're
maybe?
inside someone's ear. I think that's very powerful. You're in their heads.
That's true. So it's very intimate, right?
And I think that
yeah,
sorry.
I was probably going to. No, you go.
No, please. Ladies first.
Okay, Bethan, go.
Well, I was probably about to make the same point as you. Like, you're not only in their heads, but you have that undivided attention, which is so freaking rare these days. And that's why I listen to podcasts when I go for a walk or when I used to commute, and that would be the thing I did. So I think it's out there just for that reason alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it could help that people start thinking simple, because the problem is that if you have a video and you can burst out with 1,000 PowerPoints explaining everything, now you just have your voice. And that means that you need to develop a skill of how to tell the story in an audio form, because we talked about storytelling. You can do that in a video too. But this podcasting is a new art. It is about, conveying complex information in understandable words. And that is where I profit from podcasting. I learn myself a lot from podcasts, and I have an internal podcast in a closed area only for CEOs and CDOs of companies. So I'm not forced to send out information every week or every day. But what I learned there was that I had to understand that it is a total different medium instead of just a video or a presentation, because complexity doesn't arrive in the head if it's not explained in easy words.
What's great about podcasting is, and it's actually have been researched, that people listen to the whole episode, or the most of the episode. 93% of people listen to that. And given that podcast episodes are quite long, and they're probably a median is around 40 minutes or so, it gives the chance to tell long stories. And telling long stories is just one of the benefits, while the other is that people spend time with you or your brand. And that's priceless, I think, because if you post a YouTube video and they watch for 10 minutes, sure. You post a podcast episode and they listen for 40 minutes, it means they've spent with your brand 40 minutes. And if your podcast is weekly, that's every week they do that, right? So this is absolutely brilliant. Do you see any other benefits of podcasting, guys?
There's a weird trend. I don't do it myself, but I hear others talk about it, is to listen to a podcast on 1.5 speed or twice the speed. So does any one of you know what's that like? Why do people do this? Do a lot of people do it?
Normal speed is too slow for me. I listen mostly at most of the podcasts I listen to 1.5.
I think that it's weird.
I can't.
Please explain why.
I can't either. The thing is, then we are just consuming, but we are not, just, you could just move the slider forward till the end. It's, if I'm listening to a podcast, I really want to understand, and especially also the silence, I'm sure that Clo can help on that. What about the breaking the flow of words?
The really good podcasters or podcast interviewees know how to pace their story, and pacing also means that you have to be confident enough to leave a bit of a silent seconds of silence. I think Obama in his speeches is like the master of this. Whenever he has something important to tell, he will just pause after a big sentence, and that is something that I'm still working on.
I think the listening speed is just an individual preference, but because I listen to 1.5 and I catch everything that I need to, so it's fine. Whatever
when you go
suits
back to
one
real
best.
life, don't you think that regular people are slow talkers?
Depends.
Does it change how
Depends.
you process?
And Ida, what do you think about your students? If they get used, let's say in the next 10 years, everybody is listening to 1.5 speed, and now they reach you, Ida, and they listen to you in a 1.0 speed.
So interesting. I just realized when you were talking before, and Bethan said about undivided attention. So I mostly run my lectures online, and that's actually the reality right now. The undivided attention that I'm not sure whether they are listening when they're ironing or and I have that benefit since it's a live stream. I can always tap in like we can do now. We can make them interact with us, and we need to have that element, I think, in the podcast as well, to have that kind of element of interaction. But it's so interesting. I've never heard about this fact that 1.5 speed. What will that require from us live? That's very fun.
I think that's just an individual preference and nothing to worry about. Everybody will use their own. So let's drop this topic now. Okay,
that could be
and
research.
go back to podcasting in marketing.
Yeah.
When should a company actually use podcasting, and when should it not use podcasting? Should everyone have a podcast now or not?
No, absolutely
Bethan?
not. Yeah, I got really strong opinions on this, so apologies in advance. But
good.
Most companies shouldn't, because they probably don't have the resources for it. It is a very resource and time intensive thing to do. I do my podcast outside. I work for, but it takes up hours of my week. If you are investing in it, and you'll probably attest to this as well, invest in the audio equipment. That's probably kind of the main thing to go for. It makes a lot of difference, and also make sure it's sustainable as well. There's nothing worse. You see a lot of companies who put about 5 episodes out, and then the steam kind of falls away and they can't keep it up, and that looks really crappy. If you've got listeners who have kind of bought into it and started on that journey with you, and you've kind of left them high and dry, that's really not going to be a good customer experience. And the final point is, don't use it as a mechanism just to sell yourself, because people can tell, people aren't stupid. It's really boring to listen to a sales pitch.
True.
I guess like any other, it's always the same debate. It's like you come to a client and they say, we need to start our own podcast, and they start with the channel rather than with the why, or the idea of what do we want to share with the world. So in any discussion, whether it's should we be on Clubhouse, should we be on a podcast, should we be there and there, try to think about, start with the story, start with what you can share with the world, and what really gives you passion. And even better, if you're like Sarah, that you have the data, you can also say, okay, these are the things that we know is a passion of our customers. So I'm on your side, Bethan.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, me too. It's fantastic, because I think that we should first define what the company goals are and then choose the media. And that is always, you go to companies and they say we would like to do everything, and then everything in a very low level. So I think that the advice would be to choose the right channels and then invest in the right way, choose the right people to help you.
That's true. And don't go into podcasting only because it's trendy now. It's not a good idea.
I think if your marketing goal is thought leadership, both as a company or as an expert and individual, starting a podcast series is a good idea. But it's crucial to keep at it, not give up after 5 episodes, because that makes you look like, an amateur or someone who gives up easily. So,
I mean,
yeah, I think that's the number.
I want to say it doesn't work for every company because it depends what service or product you sell. If you sell laxatives, other people need laxative or they don't need it. There is no point in listening to you for
speed.
In your laxative, right? Maybe invest in your packaging that, hey, this tastes like strawberry and it's not too right amount of strength. But the point to listen to be in my ear for 15 minutes if you're a laxative company, right?
Challenge accepted. I would produce such a podcast.
I would listen.
But, hey, with 4 minutes to go with 4 minutes to go in our session, because we have one question that popped up. So does anyone can answer? It's a question from Natalie. Hello, thank you for your insights. What are best practices, conversation flow, for Google Actions or Flash briefing skills for news? I have no experience in this, so anyone?
Does ring a bell. With regards to Google, my apologies to Natalie, probably not the answer to your question, but the Google search engine is picking up on audio content. And that includes podcast episodes. So I haven't seen it pop up in my Google search results, but audio content is being indexed. So if you needed like an SEO type motivation for starting a podcast series, this could be one.
You could transfer.
We should never forget that we are also in an audio world. We have Alexas out there and all these digital assistants. So they are also looking for podcasts. So you can even search in podcasts. So one of the best practice flow for Google Actions is that try to get on your Alexa or any of your your devices as an app. So when you're developing your podcasting content, try to get the app on your audio device, because then an Alexa or any other of these devices, they can extract with that. That's what they do. That was, I think, what Sarah was talking about, extract the text and then understand it and then also send out the information. So my recommendation would be create an app if you are in the Google Action, if you're interested in that. Sarah, maybe again, please. I interrupted you.
I've seen some people transcribe their podcast because that gives more help to Google to index and know what's about, because maybe Google doesn't understand my accent, or maybe Google understand one word as something else from the audio.
Natalie, does that help? Can you write something in the chat if that helps you a little bit, or are we didn't we get the right answer for you?
My dirty trick for transcripts is YouTube. So actually the YouTube algorithm is pretty good, the AI behind it, into transcribing your video. So you can upload the audio of a podcast episode, and then so at the bottom of a YouTube video screen, you have these 3 dots. So the right bottom corner, 3 dots. And then when you click this, you can open transcript. And it depends on your accent, and it works better for English than for other languages, but YouTube is learning. And you open the transcript, you toggle time codes, so you don't have like the time codes in there. Copy paste it in a document. I run it through Grammarly, for example. And then you can upload it as a blog post or anything else. And this will, like Sarah mentioned, enable a different audience to bump into your content and improve probably also your rankings.
Okay, so Natalie actually wrote some more questions, but we have 27 seconds left on the timer, so I'm afraid we're not going to be able to answer. But Natalie, you can reach out to any of us. You'll find our social media on the website of the conference. Anybody, if you want to continue the conversation, you can reach out to us and we'll be happy to answer your questions. So thank you very much and enjoy your day and the rest of the conference.
Great stuff. I just posted a link for the briefing skills for Flash, so if anybody's interested.
Very nice. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.